So when you're talking to the aliens know that you're just saying it. Now, if you really mean it, and you really think and you truly believe that you can communicate telepathically, do it, especially at night because it's easier to see the little light, they'll pick up on it, and there's a good chance they'll acknowledge it and wink at you in any of a number of ways.
Okay, so how do you know that you're communicating with a benevolent? Is it a frequency match?
They're all benevolent. There are no malevolent ETs. If there were malevolent ETs,
no, I'm not saying
there'd be carnage across the earth.
Well, there's a prime directive to keep the nasties out. Just like there's a
they never
bouncer
get
at
here.
bar
That's right.
with
They
a-
never get here. Any contact that we have with ETs is benevolent.
Okay.
So not that there aren't.
It's not that there
malevolence,
aren't.
just not in our reality.
When you say nasties, it's not they're nasties. They're self-centered. They would come to Earth for their own benefits. They would cause certain effects that we would consider nasty and negative, and that's possible. But they're not doing it because they want to hurt us. They don't care. They would just do it
Right.
for their own purposes.
no emotional connection to us. Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So-
They're not allowed near. They're not allowed near Earth.
So the Galactic Federation. What are your thoughts on that?
It exists. It's just a group of civilizations in this star cluster, which goes out to roughly 200 light years from Earth, although we're not the center of it. When I say 200, that's the rough area, and we're in it. So if you go out approximately 200 light years, there's a bunch of planets, a bunch of stars, and a whole bunch of planets around them, and a number of civilizations. Many civilizations at or lower than our level of development, technologically, socially, telepathically, etc. A number that are much more developed. Syrians, essentially four big ones: the from Canopus, the star systems we call Canopus, Arcturus, Sirius, and the Pleiades cluster. For anybody that loves Japan or Japanese things, Subaru is the Japanese word for the Pleiades cluster. It's the same thing. Look at a Subaru car and look at the logo, and there's the Pleiades cluster.
Yeah.
The Canopans, or the entities or the beings from Canopus, don't have a front line, but they're involved. And there are a good dozen others that are kind of like the second and third team. But the A team, the Syrians, the Pleiadians, the Canopans. The Syrians are silicon-based
Okay.
organism, and they are probably what we would tend to call the tall whites.
Syrian. So that's why they look like rubber.
These almost rubber type skin, tall white. There's silicon based metabolism. The Arcturans, that's the other main group, are what they call the grays, or the tall grays. They're carbon based.
I thought they were blue.
Well, grayish bluish, yes. They're carbon based. And of course we have people that look almost blue on Earth for the same reason. And then the third one, the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians are also carbon based, and they're very similar to us. The Syrians are probably the most technologically advanced of the three, but that's like saying that a Maserati is more technologically advanced than a Ferrari. Well, they're both so far advanced, does it really make a difference? From our point of view, it doesn't. But the Syrians, in terms galaxial terms, among the Milky Way, they're very, very advanced. They're very much the upper end of the 1%ers. They are our primary overseers, custodians, protectors, friends. The Pleiadians are the first team, or the away team, because they look very much like us. A number of Pleiadians from a number of the planets in the cluster can pass for humans. And they're nothing like us mentally, but physically they resemble us very, very much. Some types of humans.
Aren't they beautiful? Like blonde? I mean,
Yeah, we're beautiful too.
Well, I like that you think that. I always think of.
All humans are beautiful. It's like
Oh,
all
dear.
dogs are beautiful.
Okay,
Just depends on who's doing the looking.
this is true. It's a telescope.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
The only humans I've ever seen that struck me as ugly was not because they were ugly, it's because they're very unhappy.
Yeah.
Something's bothering them.
Yeah.
But every person that's happy or content is gorgeous.
That's cool.
They are. Everyone is. No matter who they are, how tall, short, thin, not thin, pale, bronze, olive, black. People are content with themselves. The beauty glows through them. You can see it. In everybody. They have this confidence. Somebody's very sexy. Why they're sexy? One thing only. Confident. Self-assured.
That's true.
That's what makes the Pleiadians seem that way. But the same thing will happen when we have closer contact with the other civilizations. The issue is very much vibrational frequency, and that's almost like radio wave frequency. The Syrians and the Arcturans, that's a bit of a challenge. We can't get too close to too many of them for too long. We can, but there have to be some adaptations made, and that can be done technologically. But if they just came unclothed, unprotected, no suits, no equipment, and came close to us, or we went close to them, that would be unpleasant in both directions.
How does that feel?
Feels like you're getting sick.
Do you think we'll ever be at a point where we have ambassadors, human ambassadors that can go to?
Yeah, we already have that.
I was
But
just
those
reading about that.
ambassadors
We
that
already
be
have
here,
that.
you know, the ones that are that could
You mean
adapt
more openly that everybody
more
accepts?
openly, you know, when we have
sometime
our,
after disclosure, when we're ready for it, when enough humans figure out that, hey, boy, we're not going to get vaporized with alien ray guns. When they figure out these people could fry Earth like an egg, the way a madman could, or any of us could, end the lives of a whole bunch of newborns in a maternity ward. Doesn't even occur to them to do that.
Yeah.
No, but I know it's an extreme, but that's the point. That when I give that example, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so horrible and so ridiculous. That points out how ridiculous we sound to the aliens. Oh, they're going to come down and they're going to hurt us. That's how it sounds to them. It's beyond ridiculous. It's like, oh, that's. They have the tech. Look at the technology that we have. If I wanted to get rid of 5 neighbors' houses, how hard would it be for me to run down to the supermarket, get charcoal, get lighter fluid, and a bunch of matches? I'd have 5 of the neighbors' houses burned to the ground in an hour.
I so want to tell a joke here, but I won't.
Go ahead, say it.
No. But
Who does that?
well, I know.
Just because you can't. Look, I
Well,
could go down to the supermarket and get a thing of bleach, and then we could all drink some bleach.
Yeah.
Do we? In other words, there's 1,000 negative things that we could do today. It never even occurs to anybody to do it. When you hear this, the aliens are going to come get us, that is disinformation. Chuck that shit down the crapper. It ain't going to happen, folks. It ain't happening.
So at the beginning of the year, my guide said, "Okay, we want you to write. Just write down every show name you can think of." And so I just wrote. Does a witch live next door? That's the one I keep referring to. But I just wrote, and then I looked at it, and they said, "Okay, now are you starting to see?" And then I could feel when I clicked in, and I was
Bingo.
channeling, and they said, "Now do you see? Are you starting to see shows that you can package together?" It's like, "Yeah, I do." Where do you want me to start? Aliens. You need to do your part, getting the information out there.
And why do you think they picked that subject?
So
Because there's a lot of, this is what my guides are telling me now, there's a lot of receptivity for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the aliens want.
Right.
It's time.
And so here we are. And then we met you.
Here we are. And that's what we want to do on the JoyRIde shows, just make this conversation more normal, answer some of the questions, kind of get in depth in a few places, and
The
really.
big issue they're telling me is this whole, I want proof, I want validation.
And that triggers you.
Okay, what proof do you want?
Yeah, see, your voice goes up.
You got to say what proof you want.
I don't know, and I can.
And
feel
then you'll
that
start to see it.
struggle,
I want him
and-
to hold my hand. I want him to hold my hand and tell him that I'm nice.
I want them to tell me that Donald Trump really is nasty. I want them to tell
No,
me
he's
that
not.
Barack
No.
Obama is really wonderful.
No. I want him to just hold my hand. No, see,
I can't make up my own mind based on my own
No.
observations.
I have a very distinct, not to get too far off that, but I have a very distinct.
But you see the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
how
yeah.
people react to a prominent public figure?
No, I just want them to hold my hand. I'm kind of kidding.
Okay.
Okay, next question.
You want them to hold your hand and then fill it and then make it very easy for you to not think.
No, I don't.
No, see, I'm
No,
not
I
looking
don't.
for that. I'm not
Wait,
looking
you
for
think
them to
that's
come.
what I got from that?
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Okay, absolutely not.
I'm not looking for them to come and fix and save.
I don't want to fix
and
anything.
no.
They're not
I
going
can
to do
fix
that.
myself. I have fixed. To
They're
a
not
large
going to fix a
degree.
thing for us.
No?
They're going to show us how we can fix it.
So that's what I love. When somebody gives me an example of something that can be done, I'm like, oh, I never thought of that before. That's such a brilliant way of
Okay, well, an
seeing that or
example.
thinking of that.
Economic inequality. Big issue.
Yeah.
Everybody can get
there are
that
reasons
together.
for all that.
Well, there's a lot of people. Yes, there are.
Well, we were talking. One of them was like immigration, economic inequality. How do we're separated. How do we create?
Many of us on Earth believe that economics, wealth, purchasing power, any other way you want to put it, is a zero-sum game. That there is a fixed, maybe mutable, growable, but there's a certain amount of wealth,
Finite
and there's a finite amount of resources, and some have it and
This
some
is my
don't.
pie. That's your slice of the
Right.
pie.
And
You
what
only
the
get a
aliens
little
want
bit.
to tell us is that's not true.
It's a big pie for everybody.
All the people that have a
It's your belief
lot,
system.
that are well off and better, can keep what they have. And everyone else that wants to have that can have it Also. You
Right.
can all have it together.
Old paradigm.
Why doesn't this occur? Well, let's say your net worth is $10 billion. So you suddenly consume 15 meals a day. You suddenly wear 6 outfits per hour. You can afford to buy all those things. Do you need 26 wristwatches? Do you need 182 pairs of shoes?
Maybe.
When are you ever going to get to them? How many on and on and on and on? No, you don't need any of these things. You want them. Why do you want them? Now, once you get done satisfying material desires, which takes, with that kind of money, that takes, 20 minutes? Then what else do you want?
Peace and happiness. Security.
But you don't need the money for that. You get that with a lot less. This is the point. What happens? Okay, so I'm worth $10 billion. How much do I need to live this lifestyle for the rest of my life? How about you give away the $9.5 billion? Pick randomly. How about $1 million each? That's quite a few people. Pick them randomly and give them money. Who worth $10 billion does that? Nobody. Almost nobody.
But here's the thing. People don't like being told what. That's somebody saying you should do that.
It's not whether they should or not.
$1 million or $10 billion.
What the aliens want to teach us is that if the moneyed peoples, since we all love money, and money is simply a belief, that's all it is, just a voucher, and it only has value because we believe it does.
Right.
We accept it because we believe somebody else will accept it from us. That's the only reason it exists. It's complete faith, like anything else. They're saying, well, there's other faith too that's just as solid. Give away what you perceive to be your wealth to others. What will you really be doing? What you will be really doing is giving yourself something of greater value than money. But you're not going to realize it until you give it away, till you invest in your fellow soul, and then that will come back to you. This is what Jesus said. Lose your life for me and you'll have your life 1,000 times over. That doesn't mean commit suicide, folks, when you read that in the Bible. What it means is that generosity begets a multiple of itself.
But that's
And
an
the aliens want to
ideology,
tell us this, huh?
That's an ideology.
No, that's a fact. The aliens want to tell us this is absolutely a fact. If we are generous with one another, we will all become wealthy in practical, physical money terms.
Look,
If we do this voluntarily. No one does it because they're told you should. No one does it because you're compelled. It has to be completely voluntary.
Yeah, but we're okay. I completely agree with you. But we are told constantly, bombarded with the idea you're not enough. Look for it outside of yourself.
Correct.
You're not enough. You're not skinny enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not rich enough. You are constantly being told that.
Well, how many? It has to be bigger, better, smarter, prettier.
But that's what I'm saying.
Who determines what pretty is?
So that is there's a show. It's called The Last Man on Earth, and it's funny. I mean, it is funny, but it's interesting because everybody's dead. Like everybody's dead, except for this one guy. And so he gets in a bus and he travels all over the U.S. looking for people that have survived. I'm sorry, that's my 100-year-old phone.
Well, I have a technical question there. If he's traveling on a bus, is he driving the bus?
Yes. He's
Oh,
driving the
okay.
bus.
Because he's the last guy.
Right. So he writes a
Or is
sign,
this an
"I'm in
autonomous
Arizona."
bus?
Yeah, exactly. So he shows up, and when he gets home, he has the Oval Office round rug. He has a T-Rex head. He has a couple Van Goghs, and I just thought about it, and I thought that painting's worth nothing. It's worth nothing but what we place on it.
Of course.
That handbag that she paid $20,000 for is worth. It's like, oh my God, you bought into that, you know. And it's not that you don't like beautiful things or well-made things, whatever the story is. And I'm trying not to judge that.
It's worth nothing in money terms. Plus, it has zero utility.
Well,
you can't use it for anything.
But that's when I first got that idea that everything is manufactured.
We assign the value to everything.
So
Pretty much.
one day being round,
Just
and
about everything,
curvy
yes.
was considered beautiful. And then we grew up in you have to have no butt and look like a 14-year-old boy. That was considered attractive. Now we're moving more back. We're moving into the voluptuous. I'm just saying it's a moving target.
No, I know.
That's why you have to be who you are. Okay, so Tiffany wants to ask a question.
Well, I have a few questions from some of the people who are watching on Facebook Live. And Tova, hi Tova, says, thank you for the courage to share. Can you also share, so does it feel like courage to share this information?
Not in the least, but thank you for the sentiment.
So there's no fear in just
No.
putting out what you put out? Because then a lot of people who put this out feel a little bit of, I'm going to get persecuted, I'm going to get none of that. Good.
Then they
Break
can have
through the
they can have that very generous courage that was offered to me. I give it to them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can you share your personal struggles or frustrations, of any, in connecting with the ETs? And your greatest and best experience of this amazing connection?
No personal struggle or frustration at all whatsoever.
Okay.
Greatest experience? It happens all the time, constantly, having people appreciate it and telling me that they like the information, that it's good for them, that it's helpful, and that they enjoy it.
And how
Or some combination.
Yeah, how does it feel to actually receive? How does it physically feel to actually receive the information?
Oh, it's just like thinking. Actually, it's easier than thinking. And when I say thinking, an example would be, oh, you're going to buy a car. Which car? And then which dealer? We all know that process. Buy a house. Oh, boy. Which house, where, blah, blah. I'm going to get married, so we've got to get the whatever the arrangements are. We all know what that thinking process involves. It's not anything like that. That's human thinking. When I'm getting the information from my guardian angels and guides, or even from an ET when I'm challenging, it comes so organized and so logical already from them.
That thought
Packaged
package.
together.
Oh, they could write outlines that could get every freshman college student straight A's in English composition because they. And it's easy. I don't have to put anything into it. I just ask, and the bullet points come, boom, 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 and they even tell me, okay, those 4 things we just told you, bullet point those.
They just completely.
So I do. So if somebody goes to my website and reads one of my channeling sessions and sees something like that, boom, 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 boom.
Because that's how it was delivered. Yeah.
Recently, somebody asked some
Punctuation
questions
too.
about gun laws after the massacre in Parkland, Florida, and they told me, okay, you got to give a little bit of factual background to the issue because some people might not be aware of how this works in the United States. And they gave me all the information and they told me how to present it. And then they answered the questions. And I looked after and I said, well, this is great. This is great stuff. I was familiar with some of it, but they guided me through the whole thing and gave me the information, said you have to present the facts. What does the Constitution mean? What do rights mean? How does this work in the U.S.? So somebody that's not familiar with that understands before they read the answers to our questions so that they get the whole picture. And it's easy. It's simple.
So did you at one point go back and fact check and now you don't? I mean, did you ever go back and just look at the
A little bit from time to time. And I felt an almost guilty sense of pleasure at discovering that what they had told me was correct. For example, they recently told me that Tesla was going to go bankrupt. It's just a matter of when and exactly how it's happening now.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. What is their stock at right now?
It's not just the stock. They're having other problems. They've just released the latest model, the Tesla 3. One of the big car magazines has reviewed it, but now there's a lot of talk in the business press about troubles. Well, why are they talking about troubles for Tesla if Tesla can't hardly meet the demand? I mean, think about that for a moment.
Right.
Here's a company that can't meet the demand for its product. They're having troubles. Well, what's wrong with
Something's
this
going on,
picture?
yeah. Something doesn't add up.
What's wrong with this picture?
And they told you that.
Oh, they told me it's going to get bankrupt. So at some point that's going to happen. They've told me many things over the years. The breakup of the European Union, it's happening as we see it. But when they offer up an identification or information about certain social trends, everybody wants to see a schedule. Okay, this will happen on this date, this will happen on this date. No, we don't know what date it's going to happen. We struggle with the dates because there's no time off of Earth. So we know that this is happening, but exactly when it happens. The example they gave me is, imagine you have the Earth spinning like a globe and it's about, the size of, a beach ball. And it's 10 feet away and you have a dart and you're pretty good at throwing darts. Can you throw that dart and hit that beach ball sized globe from 10 feet? Yeah, you probably can. And if you don't hit it the first time, you'll hit it the second time. Now, that globe is spinning around at 1 revolution per second.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the dart going to hit? You have no idea. Do you care? No. Your goal is to hit the globe. So you do this. Boom, and you hit it. Well, where the dart hits the globe tells you what day, morning, evening, and what time.
That's great.
All of us humans
The
want to know.
intersection of time and space.
You said it was going to happen on the 31st and it happened on the 2nd. You don't have good information. It doesn't matter the specific time schedule. Listen to the trend and the major events within.
Right.
Well, they have hit me with very, very concise information early on. They told me within 2-3 weeks, I had to debate it for a little while, within 2 weeks of Donald Trump announcing his candidacy. Nobody had any idea what was going to happen. They said, he's the next president of the United States. And I thought, wow.
What?
Can he really win the party's nomination? They said, no, Patrick, my God, he's the next president of the United States. Well, that took 1.5 years. You cannot believe the sensation to me on election day. I knew what was going to happen. I will confess I felt a deep sense of smug satisfaction watching the whole country going, what?
Did you vote for him? I won't ask him.
Well, yes, but not because I love Trump.
I know.
Very much believe in voting, and it's the local elections that really matter, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
Who's going to be our county sheriff, the county judge? That's real important. I formed an opinion of Hillary Clinton and the Clintons 25 years ago. So most of the stuff you heard about the Clintons, I don't care. One way or the other. I formed an opinion, and I would not vote for Mrs. Clinton based on that opinion I formed in the 1990s. So what I'm going to do, not vote for the... I do not like politicians, and people who follow my website know that I'm very skeptical of elected officials and official power. I see an angle of great appeal in Trump, not that I personally like Trump. Don't confuse the two. I've never met him, I probably never will, and I agree, he's a bit abrasive. He says some things that are... I've grown up with a lot of people like that. It doesn't particularly faze me. I absolutely see it in other people, and why other people see that. The big appeal to me for Trump is that he's not a politician, and most people, from any angle they look at it, say, yeah, that's right, he's no politician, for better or for worse, but he's not a politician. I see, and my guides tell me, that's progress. See, folks, you've got to get away from that, because that's what you're constantly being taught. There has to be a president, there has to be a vice president, there has to be a this, there has to be a this. No, there doesn't. They have to do it this way. The structure of the United States and the government is very good, but the things that increasingly have been done are not so good. Right. So the people in desperation went and brought in an outsider dark horse. And all we hear is a constant flow of disinformation about how bad the person is. A lot of it with a good deal of merit. There's a bigger thing going on. Right. I get this information from my guides, often information from the aliens. It comes in very, very quickly, comes in very easily. Next question.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I do want to ask you, we were talking off camera, you were talking about you really get a sense of feeling of, I'll call it love, euphoria, kind of just feeling turned on, or whatever that feeling is for you.
Yes.
Not in a sexual way, but it just, when you're connecting.
That's a very good description. It's, you meet, we've all had the experience of meeting somebody that is intimately attractive, even if it never goes anywhere. Sometimes it does. That feeling, but erase the intimacy part from it, because that never enters into it. That feeling of satisfaction and acceptance is very common when I'm channeling. Mm-hmm. That's my guides expressing to me the love that all of our guides have for all of humanity, and that all of our visiting alien extraterrestrial friends have for us. They love us. They're our cousins. They're our family. They created us. They know they helped create us. They watch over us and they love us. And that's why they don't interfere and distort our progress, because they know that if they do that, they're stealing from us. Right. We think, oh, that's great. Let them come in and cure cancer. Let them come in and vaporize every gun. Let them come in and get rid of measles. Let them come in and yada, yada, yada. The list can go on till the end of the year. If they do that, they're stealing from us. That completely undermines the entire reason we incarnated and came to Earth.
Well, it's what you do with a kid. I mean, if you parent well, you let them walk through the things. You help when you need to, but you let them walk through it. But this was one of my questions. How do they, because so you have said that the aliens also have guides.
Yes.
Like we have guides, they have guides.
Yes.
Typically they have one, well, we may have 3 or 4.
Oh, they can have a couple too.
Predominant one. And so how do they view God?
Well, they understand what many of us do, that God really is the collective of us. And this was referred to, alluded to in Star Wars.
The Force?
The Force. What are they talking about? Well, it's not really a force. It's a power that's available to all of us, and it's the connection between ourselves. It is very popular on Earth, but this is the duality, and this is the misinformation for us, that God is this single, powerful entity, usually male, because that's the patriarchy, lording over us, handing out. God is ever beneficent and ever loving, but holding back the punishment and the cookies. Right. And so we get the prize or we get the punishment, and that's where this crap, excuse my French, comes out about karma, because karma fits very neatly into that. No, there is no God, central authoritarian father figure with this power over us that hands out favors and punishments. Very common to hear in Spanish the word castigo de Dios, God's punishment. No! If there's punishment, we punish ourselves.
Right.
Example, capital punishment. Oh, that's punishment. You're not punishing somebody by executing them. You're releasing them back into heaven. Oh, no, they go to hell. No, there's no hell to go to. If they decide, and they probably will, to create a hell-like environment where they self-judge, because self-judgment is the worst,
Yeah.
they'll create their own personal hell for themselves as they see the benefit of doing so, and it's completely independent of anything we on earth do. If you want to reward a killer, execute him. If you don't want to reward him, just lock him up. You can't let, they'll do it again. Lock them up, just keep them away. That's the best you can hope for. I don't think that it's possible to punish somebody that's willing to go that far. How do you punish somebody that will end another person's life? You just got to get them out of circulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no capital punishment. But capital punishment fits so neatly
Right.
into this idea of this overlord that's dictating to us what is good is what's bad, and then handing out the favors or handing out the punishments. It doesn't exist that way. God is very much exists. It's the power, the force, the connection between all living things.
I love that. It's the stuff that happens in between.
Right. That's how I dedicated the book. Sit vis vobiscum.
What does that mean?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you. I love it.
Which is a different way of saying God bless you.
God bless you.
Isn't it beautiful?
Well, that energized feeling you were talking about when you connect, that goes back to my first question about discernment and how do you know when there's so much disinformation. It's just finding that vibrational alignment within and knowing, just trusting that. I guess that's what I took away from that whole conversation.
And the
is
trust comes automatically. You feel it. You don't
you
have
just
to
feel
think,
it, generate it.
gee, does this rise to
No, you just
82.6 degrees on the
feel it.
100-degree trust scale? Of course not. You just know.
You just know it. You know or know.
How are you two able to trust me and bring you in front of the camera together? And because I'm sure there are plenty of people that would come to the same circumstances, and you'd spend 3 to 5 minutes around them, and you'd never want to see them again. How do you know?
Our knower knows.
Our knower knows. Our North Star knows.
That's an example.
Well, and that's, yeah.
That's an example right there.
All right. I have another question.
You go.
This
Shoot.
was from Minsuk. What do you, Patrick, ideally hope that your channeling and writings can create in our lives here on Earth?
Understanding.
Oh, that's simple, but not.
Understanding that we have, but we don't acknowledge. We recognize it. Well, we know, but we don't acknowledge it to ourselves. Acknowledge to ourselves the understanding that we already have. Rediscover who we truly are, not who we're told we should be.
That's it, because I think that we are constantly told to look outside of ourselves. I mean, that's why we did the show Hidden in Plain Sight. It's like,
I'm looking for my soulmate. No, you're not looking for your soulmate. There is no soulmate. All the souls that know you are already your mates. Some of them with you on earth and some of them are in heaven. They're already you're already part of the community. Oh, I mean my romantic interest.
my
Okay.
twin flame.
My twin flame. There is no. You already have all those things.
They're already there.
I want to be in a relationship. Okay. Then find somebody you really like and be direct and go up to them and say, I'd like to be in a relationship. Would you like to consider that with me? Oh, I could never do that. Why not? What's wrong with saying that? How does that hurt somebody? I think you're very nice. I'd like to be in a relationship with you. Maybe we could fall in love. Is that bad?
It's
Of
not
course
done.
not.
But it's just not done. People
Why
go,
not?
"Oh, your freak flag just flew."
Okay, then you're not the one. Thank you.
That's right.
Exactly.
Then you're not the one.
Somebody's
Thank you.
gotta
Would you like to get some
Fly
coffee
their
anyway?
flag next to you.
What'd you
Get
think
some
about the
coffee.
movie? Whatever, we can go for a ride. You don't want to be there. Okay. I still like you. I like you a lot. But if you don't like me, okay, I accept that. I know not everybody's going to like me. The issue we often have, the part of the duality in human society is we meet somebody and we're in a circumstance, particularly somebody that is important. It can be a close relative. It can be a boss at work. It can be an important client, what have you. And we get negative feedback. Oh, I should have done X, Y, or Z. Yes. Essentially, that amounts to changing your personality. Okay, yes, you could have done that. That's absolutely correct. The problem is as soon as you change your personality to please Tony, you're going to piss off the guy who thinks you're his best buddy, Billy. No matter who you become, someone's going to like you and someone's not going to like you.
Yep.
So do the easiest thing and don't become anything. Just
you.
be yourself.
And then the people come. I tell my kids that.
That's correct. You have a great idea. We should do this. We should do this. Absolutely. That's a great idea. And if it's a good idea and it has value, other people will join you. automatically. And then you can change things for the better without taking anything from anybody, without hurting anybody, whatever it is, whether it's business, whether it's friendships, whether it's wealth, whether it's public policy, whatever it is. You have a good idea, say it out loud, repeat it. And if you think no one hears it, they do. They just haven't acknowledged it to you. Don't say it again gently. Say it again. When you get tired of saying it, then don't say it anymore. But if it's a good idea, it will attract people who will join that idea. They'll join you in that idea. And it will gain as much life as it needs to benefit everybody, because it multiplies.
Well, that's what I feel like. As soon as I really started, I was really bad about that, just becoming whoever I was with. And it's I don't know if it's an empathic thing, but it was like I could meet people where they were and very whatever. But as soon as I really zeroed in on this is who I am, take it or Tiff showed up, our friend Kira showed up, like all these people that were my buddies, my tribe, showed up. And there is, so now for me to go out into the world and to be around people that I don't necessarily vibrate with, or, you know, being a mother of 3 kids, you're around a lot of people, and most of them are just amazing. But it's interesting how...
But some aren't.
But some aren't, and it's interesting how now that I don't meet you where you are, you have to make a choice. You either step back or you try to join in. I don't want to join in.
Then don't. Then don't. Just look at dogs and cats.
Exactly.
If a cat doesn't like you, they don't come around, period.
Yeah.
If the cat comes around, no matter what they do, and it was one woman on my website was complaining about the neighbor's cat comes over regularly every evening but hisses. I said, well, the hissing, and my guide said, no, the hissing, the cat likes you. The hissing is keep your distance, but I like you. I just don't want you to come too close. So that's how I tell you, don't come too close. I've had cats my whole life, but my guides told me the same thing. If the cat really doesn't like you, they just don't come around, period.
Yeah. He's just not that into you.
No.
They're just not into you. They won't come around. Or they'll wait for you to disappear. They'll watch you, and they'll figure out what your schedule is. If there's something over there they want, like food, they'll wait for you to disappear. They'll come get the food. And they can go very fast, and they can go up trees and over fences. And as soon as you show up, they'll leave. And the moment they're confident you're not coming back, they'll return. But if they don't like you, they'll stay away. No one questions that. Well, what happens when humans do that? We're not allowed to.
Right. You have to be a good Southern girl. You got to get along.
That's okay to a point. There's nothing wrong with that to a point. But at some point, you got to say, oh, bless his heart. Goodbye.
That's a Southern thing. Oh, bless his heart.
Bless his heart. Goodbye, and walk away. You don't have to. Unless you want to.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
it's a very
next question.
thing.
Okay. Sue DeSimone. Thank you, Sue. She sent in several comments and questions. She said her husband and his family had seen a flying saucer in India in the 70s. Mm-hmm. But he would not believe a word if he was listening to the show. Mm-hmm. He says she thinks it's fear, and as an engineer and atheist, he thinks she's nuts, but would really wish she would come around.
He doesn't. Well, okay. The answer from my guides is he doesn't really think she's nuts. He just doesn't want to believe the idea and is not sure why she does. But that's okay. That's fine. He doesn't want to talk about it. Well, yes, he does, because that's how she knows about it. So he does want to talk about it. He just wants some sort of verification or confirmation, like a good scientist or a good engineer would, to confirm what he already suspects. Okay, then he should set out with pen and paper specifically, not in general terms. He should put his engineering mouth where his engineering head is when he says, oh, that's not true, or whatever accent he speaks with, or whatever language. If they're in India, maybe it's Hindi. He's got to set out with pen and paper what evidence, what validation he would absolutely accept. Then he's got to start thinking about that, and he might just get it.
Oh, no.
Might just get it.
And he might just get it at an unexpected moment.
Do you know
but
what
if
that
he simply
is?
clicks his heels and goes to cancer and says, oh, that's not true, I refuse to believe it, then he is going to very happily and contentedly remain inside his bubble of denial. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. If that's where he prefers to be, there he is. He gets what he wants.
But isn't it very interesting? Sorry.
No, I say, do you know what it is? Do you know what his
Yes.
proof would be?
You do.
Yes.
I mean, I know you're not going to tell us. But
No, his guides are telling me just stay away from that and let it go with that.
But it's very
I
interesting.
don't have permission from his guides to get that far into it,
No, I know.
or hers.
It's interesting to be in a relationship with people who have such very varying degrees of interest, exploration, openness to others, to other possibilities. It's very interesting to be in an intimate relationship with that.
Well, there's a difference of opinion about something, yeah.
Very common.
Well, that in itself is a great opportunity to learn.
Right.
And maybe that opportunity could be to learn from the conflict it creates. But we create the conflict. We can, most of the time, 98% of the time, we can just tone it down or back off. It takes two to dance. You don't want to dance. Well, you can dance by yourself, but it's not the same.
It's not as fun.
Not the same. So if the conflict is unpleasant, then just don't participate.
Her next question was, you know, Stephen Hawking's recently passed away. He had a whole theory about ETs and artificial intelligence. She said, so was he wrong?
No, he was missing some information, and he was not considering something that came outside of the scientific database that he worked so hard and so courageously to expand, and he did. This is, by the way, this is coming from my guides. He did a wonderful, wonderful job as a scientist on Earth, but he was a little bit of a prisoner, a little bit of a captive of the general scientific thinking. And this is not a criticism of Mr. Hawking, and he knows all of this now that he's passed on. When he said, for example, it's dangerous to send certain signals to outer space because we might attract the wrong kind of alien, he said that with complete honesty, but in complete ignorance of the reality, because he simply hadn't seen scientific information that he would accept that would go against that position. So that was a very nuanced and well-considered, completely incorrect position about alien extraterrestrials. He didn't have the information because that was his training.
But also, that's a tall order. I mean, on one hand, if he said, yes, I believe there are ETs and I believe this and this and that, people would have stood up and said, okay, you know, if he's saying it, then it must be true. But the other side of it is then you have to go about proving it because he is a man of science and he risks being, you know, it would have wiped out so much of what
Alienated.
he did. Alienated.
And that's why we have this book. See, in the book, when you get into the chapters, it starts explaining this stuff in detail. And since it's written down, you can go as slow as you like.
Yes.
And you can read all, what is the method of propulsion? What is the method of communication? What is the method of navigation and maneuverability? How do they do it? So how do we know and not know?
That cracks me up, by the way. That whole thing with propulsion. They're like, but they couldn't cross it. It's like, you're thinking so human. You know, that the alien ships, the UFOs couldn't cross that amount, you know, that amount of space and that amount of time. And anyway, that always cracked me up.
But that's one thing that I love having my mind expanded to say there's a completely different way of doing things that you guys just haven't discovered yet. It exists. Right. I mean, if somebody in the...
Or we discovered on Earth and we've lost it.
Oh, well, that's
the civilization of Atlantis.
I mean, but when you...
We'll rediscover it.
When you think before the internet, somebody would say that we have this virtual web of information that we can all connect with the little device or telepathically. However, we would have... Like, there's no concept for it. But now it's a reality. It's here.
In 1910,
totally for granted.
In 1910, when they started building a subway in New York City, the reaction to that was, haha, people will never go down into a hole in the ground and ride a train through a tube. In the 1940s, when they said people are never going to sit and look at a cathode ray tube screen with images,
yeah, we did.
And on and on and on.
And here we are. I mean, we were talking yesterday, and I said, you know, imagine going back and trying to explain to someone in 1905 the internet and the iPhone. I mean, where would you even begin?
How about 1850 and an elevator or an escalator?
Yeah. I mean,
basic stuff that we take for granted.
Isn't that incredible?
So I love when they will explain how they do something, and we think, well, that's a completely outside of our reality, and yet, what if it isn't?
The balloon.
Oh, okay. So we were talking about travel, and instead of getting here and flying around, so you just get up out of the orbit, let the Earth turn under you, come back down, and that's you can travel.
Earth moves at about 1,000 miles per hour. The fastest commercial jet about 600.
Talk about save if you just.
But when you have to only stay on that one line, though, I guess you'd have to travel to the spot.
But you could go north or south.
You go at an angle. It's still faster than a jet.
How simple is that?
There's our $1 trillion idea.
And we already know how to get a balloon to go up to high altitude. We do it all the time. Do we have any worry or concern that the balloon is going to get punctured? No. Is there any way the helium is going to fail? No. Helium is lighter than air. I don't know. Why not?
Boeing has a big lobbyist.
Why aren't we generating electricity by my method?
I don't know. Why not? How big is that boatload of money you need?
It's not that big. And if this book does well enough,
We're not going to talk about it. We won't talk about it.
we can talk about
I
it.
don't want to talk about it.
There's a lot more to know. We can talk all about it. Most people will.
Okay, you want to talk about it?
My
Sure.
husband is an IP attorney. He would tell you, don't talk about it. No, I don't know what he'd tell you, but
Once I have it perfected, I'm just going to give it away. I'm not interested.
Say it's going to be free
I'll
energy.
patent it to prevent other people from patenting it, but I'm not going to patent it and say, pay me money. I can say anybody who wants it, they can have it.
Okay, you want to tell us about it?
Sure. When it's ready, I'm going to give it away in such a way that, for example, getting rid of me will have no effect. Oh, we can't get rid of it. We can get rid of him and keep everybody quiet about it. I've already taken the steps to make sure that can't happen.
Okay.
Getting rid of me would be useless.
So how is this constructed?
It's very simple. Earth has a magnetic grid. Magnetic fields have flux lines. We've all seen that. We learned that in school. You take a big magnet, piece of paper, iron shavings,
They line up.
and they line up and you see the lines. All you got to do is tap the piece of paper and they right away line up. Those are the flux lines or the flow lines. Magnetism is essentially electricity without wires. Wires are electricity is magnetism with. Everybody got that?
Yep.
Let me repeat that. Magnetism is electricity without wires.
okay.
Electricity is magnetism with. And every once in a while we get a buildup of electricity that's too much, so a spark jumps, and we typically call that
Lightning.
lightning.
Oh, spark jump. Okay.
Or sparks, big spark, lightning.
Put it in a battery.
So we have also figured out, and we did this about 200 years ago. Everybody knows Voltaire, Louis Ampere, volts, amps, etc. I think it was Frederick Ohm was a German physicist. Ohm's resistance. We figured out how electricity works starting 200, 250 years ago. And we figured out how to generate electricity with magnetism. We call it a generator.
Well, now the Egyptians had this in other forms of electricity. We're just talking about our modern day.
The
discovery.
early Egyptians, but they really weren't Egyptians yet. They were the escapees from Atlantis that ended up in what became Egypt. But you're right. Well, what they knew how to do, and this is one of the things that was a downfall of Atlantis, they did it on a large scale, but essentially it's very simple. We figure out where the flux line is on Earth. We know it's there. We don't do anything with it because it's very weak, so it's deemed too weak to be useful for anything. But that's why compasses work. Well, find one. It's pretty easy to find. And then put a copper coil down just below the surface into the flux line. And if we go a few feet too far one way or the other, we'll get out of the flux line, put it in the flux line. And then the current generated trickles into and charges a capacitor. For anybody that hasn't studied physics or electricity or electrical engineering, a capacitor is simply a device. It's usually in a can, but essentially it's two metal plates, usually pieces of foil. In a can there's an insulator, and it's usually paper, sometimes wax, and it's rolled up, and it holds an electric charge. Just like if you walk on carpet and then you have a spark.
Exactly.
What do you?
Right.
Back to the Future.
Oh.
You need to get the flux capacitor. Remember? And they do
Yeah, but that's a
rod?
made-up term. There's no such thing as a flux capacitor.
Well, I don't know. It sounds pretty-
It's a capacitor. Well, it's a very standard electronic device, and it was invented 100 years ago. And they come in all different sizes. Well, it fills up the capacitor to a point, and now this capacitor will either overload and discharge on its own, or you can very easily put a little switch, which is what we do in electric circuits. Put a switch, and it will make brief contact, and then the spark or the electrical potential, which is held over the two plates, jumps. It builds up. And exactly how much jumps can be controlled precisely by the size and the capacity of it. It's measured in farads. Again, farads is a way to measure capacitance or capacity to hold a charge, invented by a French physicist, farads, microfarads, and it's big F, little u, F, microfarads or farads, whatever. And that's capacitor. Well, anyway, the capacitor will feed its spark into a crystal. The crystal is made out of a very, 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 very common material that's found everywhere on Earth.
Silicone. Quartz.
Glass. Sand. Glass. Sound.
Calcium carbonate, calcite. The
I'm
key
like
is
guessing.
the key is the purity. The key is the purity and the shape. Because when the spark is fed in, it multiplies, and amplifies a lot that spark and produces a very bright flash of light, powerful. Well, the light, you just capture it with a photovoltaic panel, otherwise known as a solar panel.
Solar panel, yeah.
Electricity. Well, then all you have to do is build enough of these so that the sparks jump
And they fill these solar panels.
in a certain succession, and you get this flashing light
That's cool.
in your electricity. And this is unlimited. I'm not talking about running a transistor radio. I'm talking about,
Powering cities.
yeah. And it uses a coil in the ground, a crystal,
You know what?
and a capacitor. That's it. There's no moving parts. There's no noise. It's dangerous.
Have you
because the
built
light,
this?
a prototype, yeah. But I haven't used the electricity out of the ground, which I don't care about because that's easy. That's the simplest part.
How do you find
That's
the,
like saying, oh, gee, last thing I have to do is find the dirt in my backyard. How hard is that? It's always there.
So you can build this essentially anywhere. I mean, there are these lines.
Anywhere there's a flux line, yes.
And how hard is it or easy is it to find these flux lines?
As easy as can be. You take a little divining rod, go along where you think it is, and it'll go. As soon as you find it, the divining rod will turn to the side. The same way it does when you find water.
Right.
Because water creates a very weak magnetic field, but it's large, underground water, like
A river, yeah.
a river. But the same thing will happen when you come to a body of water anyway. If you have a divining rod and you turn it one way and you come to a lake, it'll go zip, but it doesn't tell you anything you don't already know because there's the water.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether the water's on the surface or underground.
I've told Kira this a million times, but my 10-year-old science project was about divining rods and the power of the pyramid, and I'm trying to, in my 10-year-old mind, like find the energy lines. So somewhere in there, I'm.
No, I know exactly what I just saw it when you were talking, and I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask your guides or check in on this.
Now,
So-
for anybody listening to this, the divining rod for a still body of water might not work because the amount of magnetism in that water is low because the body of water is static versus the Earth's magnetic grid, even though it's weak, is flowing a long way, basically from the north to the south pole. So it's a very, very long flow. So it will activate a divining rod that a body of water might not,
Oh, wow.
right, simply because of the strength of the magnetism.
And how far apart are they?
Depends on the strength. What I'm getting is, depending on which ones you pick, 50 to 100 miles.
Oh, wow.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere on the surface of the Earth. And there are nodes where they come together.
Mm-hmm.
And there are very interesting monuments and all sorts of other
Like
things built.
Stonehenge and
Correct.
all
They're built
that,
at those nodes
yeah.
for those reasons.
Exactly. I knew that. What I saw. So I've seen this a lot. It's like inside a pyramid, and when you look up, I think you were there too. When you look up, you see this. You see an opening, but there's a big crystal in the top of the pyramid, and it's where the light came down. It looks like that, and so that's a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause I can see it. We're inside, and we're not allowed out. I mean, it's we're not allowed out.
Now, that's for a different purpose. Not necessarily for amplification, but for illumination. And the power of the pyramid has other effects that, as we all now know very well, basically suspend the chemical effects that we would call deterioration or decay.
See, this was a healing chamber. It was some sort of a
Correct.
healing place.
Afterwards, way afterwards, when this is forgotten, the later civilizations of Egyptians found out that if you buried the wrapped up body of somebody dead, it wouldn't rot away. It would dry. It would dry out, but that's it. Mummified. It would dry out, but that was it. It wouldn't rot away.
So that's
Completely
why there's chambers.
suspended the chemical effect of bacteria. It wouldn't. If they put it in that location, because that's the effect of the pyramid. Now you can't suspend the effect of evaporation, but the chemical effect. Evaporation is not a chemical; it just changes from one state to another. But the chemical effects that bacteria bring about, like bacteria cause chemical effects in your mouth and that rots your teeth, but it's the acids, the chemical action. That's all suspended in the pyramid, so that's why the mummified bodies survive thousands of years. There's no chemical action. There's no chemical reaction.
So it wasn't what they did to it; it's where they put it.
Correct. It's the power of the pyramid. You can do it today. You can build a pyramid whatever size, figure out where that location is exactly. It's very easy to do. And you can put something in there and preserve it. So you can take a grape, put a grape in there, and it will very slowly dry up, but it will never rot. If you
has
keep
to
it in
be on.
When my older brother was in boot camp for the Navy many years ago, he built a small small balsa wood pyramid, put paper on the sides, and figured out exactly where the location, the height, and everything else. And he had one single edge razor, so he would shave, and he had to shave every day. and he would take that razor off. And he marked the area in his foot locker. So he'd put the little platform he'd built out of balsa wood. He'd put the razor on top, then very carefully put the pyramid on top according to little marks, so it would always be in the right spot. So the razor would always be exactly right in the center at exactly the right height. I forget how high it is. And he said he used it every day for 9 weeks, and it never got dull.
Wow.
It stayed brand new sharp the whole time. So he confirmed, yeah, pyramid power works. It's absolutely, there's no question about it.
But it sounds like it's a manipulation of the energy.
Suspension of the chemical effect, which is really the magnetic electrical effect.
So it's how it harnesses the Earth's
how it redirects it.
Okay. You were going to say something. She's all about grounding wires.
Oh gosh, I'm just got a million questions.
Well, grounding wires, that's very simple physics. Grounding wire just prevents a buildup of electrical potential from one to the other, and it keeps it balanced.
But as humans, we often are not grounded. We're often around all these electromagnetic fields, and our feet aren't in the ground. We often don't complete that circuit between the positive and the negative and get ourselves grounded. And they talk about all the extra energy buildup can create inflammation.
Take your shoes off. Go out into this. My guide just telling me, take your shoes off. Go out and stand in the grass. Drink a glass of water.
Yeah.
Ooh, drink a glass of water.
Drink a glass of water. Stand in the grass.
That's a great idea.
Doesn't work right away. Energy. Spend a little more time out there. Take a book out. Sit there and put your feet down on the ground. Your bare feet down on the ground and read a book.
Yeah.
Don't sit with your legs up crossed. Put them down on the ground. Sit there. Prop yourself up. Do whatever you want. Drink your water. Drink your tea. Whatever.
But we used to walk the earth, and now we are often
that'll do it too.
Walking the earth anymore. We're not walking these energy lines. We're suspended
and the closer your feet touch the ground, the better.
So if they're in the dirt.
That's the best.
What about the beach? What about the water in the ocean?
That'll work. Yeah, that'll work too.
Is it a salt thing, or is it?
That helps a little bit with conductivity, but we know that. Yeah, that can help too. That's one of the reasons, for example, if you get an injury and you go to the beach with an injury and you get salt water on it, you spend the day at the beach, it heals 10 times faster. I discovered that when I was a kid, and that's absolutely true. So if you get a burn or a cut, just a couple hours at the beach, and it'll be amazing how fast it starts to. No, it's the chemical and the electrical effect of the water.
Wow. I like water. I prefer water.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see if we got one more question. I had a question for you about back to ET contact and how. Like, I love stories of crop circles, but there's a lot of stories of, and you mentioned it in your book, about people who come and cattle gets kind of mutilated, and people who have alien abduction stories where they feel like they've been taken up on the ship, or they've had some surgical procedure or implants put in.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't mention too much about that in here.
Yeah, but it happens.
What are the implants?
It's generally a chip, and it's designed to collect essentially biological, metabolical information about that person, how they react in situations of stress, elation, disappointment, sleep, sickness, whatever. What occurs inside their body. It's all being kept in the chip.
That happened to, and it was her guides that put it in her, or her alien friends that put it in her. And
this is all by agreement.
It's all by soul agreement, not like a human ego. Haven't agreed to this. That's why people get so freaked out and feel.
But they have agreed to it. That's what's happening. They just don't remember that they agreed to it because essentially they've decided, I'm not going to remember this as a human. That opens the door for the disinformation. Oh, it's great. See, there's these evil aliens that are coming down to get us. These evil aliens that are coming down to get us, if they really wanted to get us, how long do you think we'd be around?
Yeah. So I read somewhere that they had these aliens, the ones that kind of tinkered with our, not the original ones, but the ones that came in and tinkered with our.
It was all of them together.
DNA,
yes.
That some of them
upgraded it.
They upgraded it.
It was very careful, methodical, planned. We might say tinkering, but it was with a very specific purpose.
Well, so they come in, and I know that they have found people that have been killed or they've disappeared, and they said, yes, that's one view from our standpoint. It's like, oh my gosh, these aliens. From the other standpoint, they came and got their buddy. You know, it's like it was done, and they took him home.
Correct, but very little alien involvement in that, although it does occur, say my guides. A lot more of that is just the life plan and contract that person has. There's no aliens involved in it.